Guess who wrote this amazing article that we're going to check? No, it wasn't me, people. It was Hemet Meta. So go check it in the
Yay.
description. Yeah, he's amazing. And I agree with a lot of things that he says in here. So I'm going to take it, to my realm. But before that, what is this article all about? Everybody, please check it. It's called Satanists Will Sue PA School District for Rejecting After School Satan Club. What is this all about? Well, I love reading him with meta. I love this guy. So he's telling us how this specific group was rejected by the school on basis of beliefs of people. And we have talked several times about what Satanists actually are. They are not really a group of evil people wanting to worship Satan. They mostly don't even believe in Satan. The only ones who believe in Satan are Christians, and that is where I want to go. Because I tend to talk about the harms of religion, and I believe that magical thinking and all the fear that is related to magical thinking is one of the biggest problems that we have with religion. These people, they are not opposing this small school club because they are bored people or because they want children not to have fun. No, they actually believe that these people are Satan worshippers. And when somebody tries to explain, I'm going to quote the article in here. When local resident Dina Weaver attempted to educate everyone on what the Satanic Temple actually teaches, things like how we should act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures, and if one makes a mistake, one should do one best to rectify it, she was summarily rejected by the religious mob that, who you can guess, were totally going against this idea. And somebody, sorry, no, not somebody. I'm not reading that. I'm going to keep reading about what Weaver said. She said, "What is objectionable about all of that?" And immediately the whole auditorium erupted, commenting and shouting stuff. And she had to go back to her seat because she actually realized, and I'm going to keep quoting the article, that they fear so much that there is an actual Satan that they feel even trying to understand what it is all about will go against their souls and could even curse them. And Hemet Meta finishes saying, "I guess I should quote this once again." And he goes to explain that the Satanic Temple doesn't believe in a literal Satan, and that the clubs is not about indoctrination, and rather than, quoting again, focus on free inquiry and rationalism, the scientific basis for which we know what we know about the world around us. It's like a science club with a devilish twist. And I guess I do feel that the Satanic Temple and Satanists in general, people who belong to the Satanic Temple and show Christians why there should be a separation between church and state, they do wonders by explaining people why they should separate church and state. As soon as you give religion the authorization to put their own statues, oh, then we can put Baphomet. And then they realize, oh yeah, maybe I don't want this freedom from all religions. So my question is, are we going to make people realize that Satanic are nothing but a group that is using a weird name to do stuff? Or is this inducing fear into these people who actually believe in Satan and who are afraid of that? I'm still thinking about that. I don't know about you guys, and I know that you have so many interesting things to say about this, so I'm gonna let you go now. But I'm still thinking about that. Is the Satanic Temple is great to talk about separation between church and state, but is it going to help at schools because these people actually fear Satan? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. So I want to hear you people. Who wants to take it from here?
I mean,
Jessica.
sorry. I was
Yeah, go
gonna
Yes.
ahead.
say this is definitely a thing I talk a lot about, and has always been something that has been uncomfortable for me to think about is these stories that we see a lot of, and maybe not as much anymore, but certainly maybe 5 or 10 years ago, there's a Christian scene on City Hall. What's the with the Jesus in the manger and we see that all the time, and it's always been a very clear separation of church and state. However, and I am not saying that anybody who is fighting against things like this is wrong, by no means. Every time these stories get picked up, atheists just sort of come out looking like assholes. And truly, like, that is a thing that I often struggle with. And like, we all on this panel understand like what the satanic church is and all of that. But I don't know that it's fair to assume that everybody else in the country, especially in more conservative areas, understand what that means. It reminds me a little bit of the flying spaghetti monster, that it was a very clear thing of like, here is how we are trying to make you understand what we're going through. However, we're always going to keep running into this when we are using purposely provocative titles. And that's not a fault on the satanic church or the satanic temple. It's just one of those things that we have to decide, do we want to be glib and right, or do we want to maybe make ourselves a little easier to, like, a little more palatable? And I don't know if that's the right thing to do. That's just how I always land.
Mm.
Yeah, I
Richard,
want to
what you
piggyback
got?
on that as yeah, that just piggybacking on that a little bit. That was the standout thing as well for me in this article. It was the first thing I wrote in my notes, and that was would these parents have complained if it was Muslims or Sikhs or Buddhists who wanted to start the club? And that's a very, very important point. Um, are they banning it because they don't understand it or because it's different? And this is something I think that we need to kind of get through. And just as Jessica said, are we being kind of ignorant of the real fears that these people might have? And make it clear that it's a very good thing that the Satanic Temple are doing, and they always have been very good at kind of pushing these things, but at the same time, I think we need that hand in hand needs to go with the educating people on what the Satanic Temple is, rather than just having them challenge things. We need to get those things out hand in hand, so people aren't giving a knee jerk reaction and rejecting it just because of the name.
Yeah. Well, I think that a couple of things should be highlighted when we're talking about this specifically. Like, how are people reacting as soon as you hear Satan in the title of anything that you're trying to present, especially when you're talking about introducing this term with an after school program? And I think that one of the things that one of the parents said, specifically, her name was Jody Osborne of Wellsville, who actually delivered. This is something that was in one of the articles that we read, because, like, there's an additional link, people, you should follow. But one of the things that she said is that, I am sad all we are talking about is Satan. It's not about Satan. It's about God. And she said then, wrongs will be righted. And if we don't start standing now, we're going to lose our nation. So, this is a sentiment for these 300 parents who actually came and attended this meeting, share, who were against this particular after school program. Because even the one of the articles mentioned that the whole purpose of this particular satanic after school club was explained. And as Teo mentioned, they were saying that this club is not doesn't promote Satan. It doesn't promote any type of ideals that are associated with Satan, especially if anybody was around during the 80s and 90s. If anybody remembers the Satanic Panic, yeah, none of that. It's none of that. However, that is the image conjured into one's head, who happens to glean really on to religious or especially Christian ideals concerning this whole thing. Um, I'm going to open it back up to the floor. Jessica, you wrote a couple other things concerning about, like, some of the frustrations that you also observe concerning this particular story?
Yeah, so I think, and I kind of talked about it, that it's atheists always are the bad guys. It just, no matter what we do, the sort of like public sentiment is atheists are here to ruin your fun or whatever. Like that seems to be what
But Jessica,
what
we
we end
are.
up with over and over. Oh my god, I hate fun. I famously hate fun. Thank you for bringing that up so I can talk about it now.
No
Fun is
problem.
terrible. Only be sad. But and so when I see things like I just think we all and as somebody who did not grow up religious, I think people who maybe did grow up religious might have a better understanding of there's long-term effects with like things like Satan. And so when you say like to a very nice Christian person that we're representing Satan, to like it might as well say like, hey, it's us, Hitler's friends. Like it to them is the definition of evil that atheists are trying to rebrand. So I don't know. The thing is, now we are their rallying cry. Like we heard that wrongs will be righted. Another person said, you shouldn't be here. There's no room for you here. If this freaking group gets voted in, let's do something about it. We have now, and I want to be clear, and these kids are doing the right thing. If these kids are trying to form a club for themselves and for their community, that's great. But we have sort of teed ourselves up to be the bad guys here. And if you are a good Christian person in a good Christian community, and you just hear atheists coming in of like, hey, we're not just atheists, we're Satan's club. We all understand what that is trying to explain and put forth. But all they hear is these guys are teaming up with the bad guys. These guys are Wario or whatever. Like it's not wrong, but it's certainly not helping in terms of like, I'm a marketing professional. It is not helping in terms of a marketing perspective. If you want to marry your brand with Satan, you're going to deal with the blowback of that. And it's a good example of why separation of church and state is so important, because obviously they talked about, oh, well, we've never had like Muslims want to come and do this. And like, yeah, of course you haven't, because they don't feel safe to do so, or they just simply don't exist. So they made a choice. They went to this issue of we want atheist representation in our school, and they chose to take a pretty hardcore turn. We're using the word Satan, knowing that this is something that's really evocative for people. So this stuff is going to keep happening, and we're just going to have to keep being clear that what we are for is morality and protection of people and protection of the most vulnerable of us, the queer community and so forth. But if we're going to frame it around Satan, we're going to keep getting this blowback. It's just gonna happen.
Actually, I want to take into what you said about people growing up a believer, because I grew up being a believer. And for me, whenever I heard the name Satan and Satanist for a long time, and actually I remember being an atheist for a long time, for me, a Satanist was just somebody who believed in Satan. And it was, I'm sorry, I know that I'm going to get a lot of backlash for what I'm about to say, but for me it was very stupid trying to take the idea of try to have the idea of the satanic temple, because, well, I was also in my stage of angry atheist. So it was like, okay, guys, you stop believing, and now you're going to go with the name of Satan. That is the same idea. And now that I totally understand what the satanic temple does, the name still has a negative connotation despite me understanding what the satanic temple is. Because, the fact that in certain countries in South America, there have been some satanic, religious sects, that is not helping at all. But at the same time, it's like the name is chosen just to attack. And as I said, people are afraid of this. It's not only that they dislike atheists. No, they actually believe that those people are going to worship Satan. As Cynthia quote, and I'm divided in here because I have been telling you all these weeks that I'm being here that I'm extremely afraid of the USA turning into a theocracy. Cynthia quoted this guy saying that This is about God, it's not about Satan. And I want to quote the next part of this article because it was very strong when I read this guy called Paul Miller. He took to the microphone and told the community, you shouldn't be here. There is no room for you here. If this freaking, this his words, group does get voted in, let's do something about it. He wants the whole club out of town because they are that afraid of Satan. And yeah, then they say, when I hear Satan, I don't research that. I don't look it up. I'm not about to lie and what is that? Let it slip through my fingers. I could have stopped this from happening to others' children. So it's again, what are we going to do with our children? Please think about their children. And they don't understand what Satanists are about. And the fact that they have that name, it's going to create this terrible reaction. And I guess I understand because they are afraid. As a believer, I would have been very afraid of the name Satan. And hearing that there was a satanic group in my town, I could have freaked out as a believer. And once again, I understand the group now, and I still don't like the name. Sorry. And it's because I understand the feelings that it evokes in others. Sorry, Cynthia.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that when I was talking about like utilizing the terminology Satan, it does conjure certain images in one's mind, even with us who were religious at one point in our lives, rather. We still have some of those latent effects of being exposed to the word Satan and how it can even evoke a bit of fear, even with knowledge. And Richard, our resident religious scholar, yes, I'm going to keep on calling you that. And there's nothing you can do about it, this deal. I want you specifically to see if you can kind of like run with, something like that Teo was talking about concerning what the gentleman Paul Miller said about when I hear this word, I don't research it.
Yeah, that was problematic. He specifically said you shouldn't be here. There's no room for you here. If this freaking group doesn't get voted in, let's do something about it. And that's a problematic thing to be coming out with. That's a veiled threat. That sounds to me like a veiled threat. And it kind of adds
veiled is generous. It's a threat.
as somebody from kind of outside the US who may be being really bad racial stereotyping here, I just get the kind of image of people jumping in the back of a pickup truck with burning torches. That's the kind of image.
Torches these days. So
they've upgraded, Richard.
But that's the image I get when I hear something like that, and it's indicative to me of a larger problem with. I mean, and I talk about this all the time on the non-profits, but I'm not going to stop talking about it. Education, the school boards and themselves need educating in the US, because we've had cases of like anti-trans things being put forward, anti-science things put forward. They wanted creationism was seriously considered to be taught in Texas, and Texas is a place, as I understand it, that informs the rest of the US when it comes to publishing school materials.
Mm-hmm.
These things shouldn't be seriously considered. And education is so important. That is the key. That's what's going to tell people the difference between Satanism as a mystical kind of creature which is going to come in the night and take your children away, and it being a legitimate religion. And that's the thing that's going to inform people that trans people and teaching about evolution are not wrong. They are. That's just legitimate. That's life. and it's not a case of we have this these crazy ideas about like creationism and this fear that trans people are going to come in the night and steal your children again, like the Satan thing. It's like, these are weird ideas. This, as an outsider to the US, this shouldn't be a thing. And when we're looking at a country which is supposed to be a world leader on all fronts, it's you ask people outside of the US what they think of the US, and they look at stories like this, and they say, the US is stuck in the 1970s. Let's get moving forward, because I've got friends from the US, so I'm informed.
So your closest friends are Americans.
Yeah. My closest friends are Americans. I got an American friend. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm allowed to say this because I know a lot of Americans.
All right.
This isn't the case. America isn't stuck in the 1970s. America can be very progressive. It's and that's what we need to get forward to the rest of the world, this image to the rest of the world, that America isn't like it's perceived outside of the US. And it's not going to happen with kind of school board decisions that are being made currently in the US. And that's something we need to overturn, I think.
Well, that's definitely a reason that people should be more invested. I say hypocritically, be more invested in like small government and run for their local school board, because this is where these things are happening, that it's very easy for a bunch of people to get voted onto the school board who have no interest in like science or truth. So it's important that people who are skeptics and science-minded are also doing those things. She says that she's never run for office before in her life and never will. I'm helping.
All right, lending your voice in this particular aspect. Teo, I'm going to give you a wrap up, and then I'll jump in with this particular thingy and moving on. But go ahead, Teo.
Oh, I just wanted to say, when the scholar is right, the scholar is right. Nothing to say there. And what do you mean rich Americans aren't like that? I'm shocked. Shocked, I'm telling you. So, okay, sorry about that. But yeah, I totally agree in the education thing. I always say that education is the only way to stop the USA to becoming into a theocracy, and also Hispano-American countries from following the USA bad example. So we need education. I think that's key. And I will keep thinking, is this the right way of doing it? Do we have other ways of doing it? And I know that in the later segments, I will have more things to say about that. So people keep in mind, education is important. You know why. We will be talking about that later on. So thank you for that wrap up, Cynthia.
Most definitely. And I added one more article, guys, that is going to be in the show notes below. And because I thought it was very interesting, I thought it was very appropriate for this conversation. And one of the reasons why I asked specifically for Richard to comment on Paul Miller's comment concerning, when I hear this, I don't research it, and how I believe a representative from the Satanic Temple actually did her darndest to try to educate the people, but they just basically started to yell and jeer at her to sit down. So in this particular article called "Why Facts Alone Don't Change Minds," in our big debate, written in the Conversation in May 2014. One thing that I thought was thought provoking was that we assume that our clarity of vision allows us to infer from a set of facts to a particular conclusion, and that those reaching alternative conclusions must be victims of bias or confused thinking. This often results in a conviction that saying something slower or louder will do the job. Unfortunately, this is like trying to lift a mattress by one corner. There is very little movement given the effort involved. The delivery of factual information is a necessary condition to change minds. However, it is not always sufficient. But I will say this before we move on, specifically about this particular article and the next steps. The Satanic Temple will be bringing up a lawsuit. The one of the representatives, Diana Weaver, when she was asked by, Hammett, what's next, and I'm sorry, when Hammond asked Greaves directly, what are the next steps? Will there be a lawsuit? He said very bluntly, yeah, yeah, yup, there will be. And if this conduct is allowed to stand, the rule of law means nothing. Specifically, the rule of law that they were referencing is that in 2001, the Supreme Court said all public schools with limited public forums were forbidden from discriminating on the basis of religion. That means if a school allows the formation of extracurricular clubs, I hooked on phonics work for me, extracurricular clubs, then a religious one that follows all the rules can't be banned.
I truly do not see how they're going to lose this case. That does not mean they're not going to lose this case. But like, I graduated high school in 2004, she says, not knowing her age. And there was also, I was at the beginning of like the gay alliance thing, you know what I mean, of like, we just discovered gay people in the early aughts and we're like, we'll make clubs for you. But yeah, I mean, there was a million Christian things. There was Meet Me at the Flagpole was the big one. Like, there's been a gajillion specifically Christian groups at the high school I went to. There is no legal standing that they can lose this, and yet I am not optimistic.
Well, I think that this story is definitely worth watching. I would encourage ones to, let's go ahead and just follow up, and we're good for that on the nonprofits, actually following up on stories we've done in the past. We can do it again. I definitely would love to see how this particular story pans out, because like the whole reason why the Satanic Club was actually founded in the first place, or they tried to put it into place in the first place, is because one of the parents saw that they had like a Christian club that was forming in the district, and she wanted a alternative secular club for her child, and this is why this whole thing came up. So like, hey, it's kind of like the Baphomet thing, like, hey, if you're going to stick up the 10 Commandments, we can stick up ahead of Baphomet. Deal with it, and that is that. You get it? You understand? Yeah, in your noggin. All right.